sometimes makes us forget how valuable they are. A tour of Macron today especially leaves a sense of sadness. And maybe the most yearning thing is the friendship and love shared amongst the neighbors. I will keep a page of memories made here in Macron today, deep down in my heart for a long time.
Welcome to our morning edition of Arirang News. We begin with these stories making the headlines at this hour. U.S. President Donald Trump is ramping up pressure on South Korea, saying Seoul must pay for its own defense. He also said he would impose tariffs on specific sectors, including semiconductors and copper, some of South Korea's critical exports to the United States. Intense heat wave is expected to continue to grip South Korea today after the country saw daytime temperatures in some parts of the country reaching up to 40 degrees Celsius yesterday. The United States imposed a new set of sanctions on North Korea and Russia. This included a North Korean individual accused of running a cyber scheme to help Pyongyang use its overseas IT workers to be recruited by foreign companies with falsified identities. Just a day after Trump threatened to impose tariffs on his trading partners, including South Korea, he says Seoul should be paying more for the U.S. military presence on the peninsula. As Trump looks to defense cost sharing with broader tariff issues, Seoul now faces a challenging balancing act in negotiations. Our An Sung-jin starts us off.
U.S. President Donald Trump is pushing for a one-stop shopping deal with South Korea on defense and trade. He continues to signal a hardline stance as he demands that Seoul increases its contributions to U.S. defense costs. At the White House on Tuesday, Trump stated that its Asian ally was underpaying for military protection, referring back to negotiations during his first term, where he claimed he demanded that Seoul should pay $10 billion a year in defense cost sharing, a figure far above current levels.
You know, we have 45,000 soldiers in South Korea, and you know, that's a huge economic development for them. That's tremendous amount. That's like having a city. That's tremendous money for them, and it's a tremendous loss for us. So,
unlike Trump's assertion, there are currently around 28,000 U.S. military troops in Korea. Trump also stated he is imposing tariffs on specific sectors, including semiconductors, one of Korea's critical exports, which the country exported $10.7 billion of products to the U.S. in 2024. When the semiconductor tariff would take effect and the exact rate hasn't been specified. He also announced an incoming tariff on copper to boost U.S. production of a metal critical to electric vehicles and other consumer goods.
We did steel, as you know, they're 50%. We did aluminum, 50%. Lumber just came out.
Why don't you announce copper?
And we did cars. cars. And now, today we're doing copper. I believe the tariff on copper, we're going to make it 50%.
Pharmaceutical imports could also face up to a 200% tariff. These remarks come just one day after Trump notified South Korea and Japan of a 25% tariff set to take effect on August 1st. Trump posted on his social media Truth Social on Tuesday that the deadline is firm, and though negotiations could still happen, no extensions will be granted. As the August 1st tariff deadline looms closer, South Korea not only has to defend its key industries, but also preserve its security alliance with the U.S., adding to the complexity of the high-stake negotiations. 안성진, Arirang News.
Now, following U.S. President Donald Trump's announcement regarding his new tariffs timeline, South Korea's presidential office convened a response meeting on Tuesday. Our top office correspondent Song Yujin reports.
Regarding U.S. President Donald Trump's decision to impose 25% tariffs on South Korean imports from August 1st, the presidential office says it sees value in having earned more time.
Given how little time there has been after the new administration was launched, we see it as having avoided the worst-case scenario of tariffs going up. We've now secured extra time for negotiations, and National Security Advisor Ri Sung-rak is continuing high-level talks in the U.S.
In response, Presidential Chief of Policy Kim Yong-bum convened a meeting on Tuesday with the Ministries of Industry, Finance, and Foreign Affairs. Kim stressed that although swift negotiations are important, safeguarding South Korea's national interests remains the top priority and urged the ministries to approach tariff talks with that in mind. He noted that market reactions so far have been relatively calm, but called for close monitoring and support measures for sectors likely to be affected, including car makers and steel producers. Kim added that once National Security Advisor Ri Sung-rak returns from the U.S., they will hold a joint meeting to discuss the next steps. Ri, who was on a 3-day visit to Washington, D.C., met with his American counterpart Marco Rubio on Monday local time. There, the South Korean delegation reiterated the need to arrange a summit between Presidents Lee and Trump as soon as possible to make progress on key issues, to which the U.S. side agreed. On tariffs, Washington expressed hopes for a close coordination to reach a deal before they kick in. On the same day, Seoul's top trade negotiator Yeo Han-gu, also in Washington, met with Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick. Yeo called for lowering tariffs on major Korean exports, mainly automobiles and steel, which are currently subject to separate 25% and 50% duties. He also emphasized Seoul's commitment to bilateral cooperation on manufacturing, describing it as a way to achieve more balanced trade. Yeo and Lutnick are scheduled to continue their talks on Wednesday. Now, Lee's visit to Washington is set to conclude on Tuesday. More details of his trip are expected once he returns to Seoul. Song Yujin, Arirang News.
So as we just heard, U.S. President Donald Trump continues to threaten South Korea by calling on Seoul to pay for its own defense and vowing to impose extra tariffs. For more on this, we're joined by Professor Robert Kelly, Professor of International Relations at Busan National University. Professor Kelly, thanks for joining us this morning.
Thanks for having me.
So how do you think the Korean government should handle the issue of sharing the cost of keeping American troops in South Korea?
Well, I would encourage South Korea to show flexibility. We know that Donald Trump sort of is impulsive on these questions. I would encourage South Korea, at least initially with Donald Trump, to indulge him, to sort of see what the sort of outer limits of Trump's demands are, right? And then try to negotiate it with people further down the food chain, if you will, sort of deeper in the State Department or the Defense Department or the Commerce Department, and then negotiate with those people who better understand the issues than Donald Trump. I mean, it's sort of worth remembering that Trump is very impulsive. You know, he sees stuff on TV and he kind of throws stuff out there on Twitter or whatever, and he doesn't really fully understand these issues. It's not really clear to me that Donald Trump fully appreciates, for example, the American Alliance Network, right? He sort of attacks U.S. allies on a fairly regular basis. So I would encourage South Korea to go slow a little bit and see if they can sort of move the debate away from the executive level a little bit lower, because, you know, if you deal with Trump, you know, you don't really know what you're going to get with him, you know, on social media and TV.
All right, I see. And Trump's comments today come as South Korea's top security advisor is in Washington for talks on tariffs and a potential summit between the two countries. So could we expect to see President Lee Jae-myung and Trump meet in the near future?
Probably not before the August 1 deadline. But then, we never know if the August 1 deadline with Trump is going to actually be a thing, right? Again, this is sort of this is Trump's sort of style, right? He kind of throws these big pronouncements out there on social media and stuff like that, right? And then as the date approaches, he sort of pushes it back and pushes it back. I would be surprised if August 1 was sort of some kind of cliffhanger date. That usually is not how Trump has done this in the last 6 months. He ends up sort of pushing these things. So my sense is that South Korea will probably sort of negotiate for more time and probably get it. I think there are a lot of people around Trump who sort of realize the utility of the relationship with South Korea, particularly if the U.S. is going to contest China in the coming decades, right? We need allies out here. And so I would imagine that there will be some room to push that deadline. But if they can actually work an executive meeting, right, a sort of presidential level summit in the next 3 weeks, that would probably be the best thing, right? I mean, Trump loves that kind of attention. He loves the pomp and circumstance of meeting foreign leaders and stuff like that. And it might actually be a way to get some flexibility from the Trump people if that can be arranged in such a short time.
Okay, so like you mentioned, Trump pushed back the tariff deadline to August 1st, allowing trade talks to continue for around 3 more weeks. How do you think the negotiations with South Korea will unfold?
If I had to guess, the South Koreans will probably end up giving on some stuff that's probably not as important. Trump is a tougher negotiator, I suppose, in the sense on these kinds of issues, in the sense that Trump doesn't care about U.S. alliance relationships. So if this kind of blows up, if the U.S.-ROC relationship kind of blows up, Trump's not going to worry about it in the way that Biden did, for example. And I think there's some low-hanging fruit that South Korea can give as concessions. Sort of like some of these digital issues, for example, like Google Maps and stuff like that. Google operates in all these countries all over the world, right? Korea really makes a big deal out of this, right? But Google Maps operate in China. If the Chinese can find a way to live with that, I'm sure South Korea can. South Korea is a pretty wealthy country. South Korea could pay a little bit more in the special measures agreement, right? The U.S. alliance is very, very valuable for South Korea. It backstops South Korean security. It backstops foreign capital here. It helps keep South Korea's defense burden. It's the defense spending much lower than it would be if South Korea stood alone. And so I think it's actually worth it for South Korea perhaps to kick in some more, right? I think the real issue is not the concessions themselves, which I would actually are relatively minor for political economy here. It's really sort of the perception of national humiliation, right? The perception that Trump is sort of bullying South Korea, that South Korea is sort of going to give in, right? And I think that's really what would happen, right? The perception that Trump is sort of like defeating South Korea will show up in the media here, and that's really what would generate the pushback. I would imagine if Trump hadn't done this in such a loud, visible way on television, he probably would have gotten more willingness for the South Koreans to move. But now, of course, it looks like a big issue. It's all over TV. It's all over the South Korean media. And that makes it harder for the South Koreans to make concessions.
I see. And you just mentioned digital issues. So what are some other areas, other issues that's on the table for trade talks between South Korea and the United States? And what leverage does Seoul have, do you think?
Well, beef is one of those issues, right? You see that was just sort of like in the South Korean media today. I was just sort of like looking at the South Korean media this morning, right? Sort of beef is an issue, right, because of mad cow disease. My sense is, again, this is another area where my sense is that you could probably make some concessions without really too much give, right? I mean, mad cow was what, like 18, 19 years ago? These digital issues that Apple and Google have brought up, sort of tracking and mapping and stuff like that. I don't know too much about that myself, not being a big tech guy. But I mean, there's the issues floating around. And then, of course, the payments issue. I think my guess is the payments issue is probably the toughest one because that looks like it's tribute, right? It looks like South Koreans are paying Trump directly, right? And that is really, really hard in democracies. The Qataris can give Trump the airplane, and it's like, okay. But, if you do that in a democracy, you're going to face real pushback in the media. And again, my sense is that, I would bet there are a fair number of people in the South Korean bureaucracy that would be comfortable making these kinds of concessions to keep the Americans on board. But the publicity around it is the real killer because it looks like, again, it looks like humiliation and sort of giving in and being bullied. And, of course, that's the dynamic that Trump likes, right? I mean, Trump likes that perception, right, that he's sort of like browbeating American allies into making unwanted concessions. He thrills to that kind of perception.
Right, we'll have to see how it goes. All right, Professor Kelly, I'm afraid that's all the time we have for today. Thank you so much for your insight. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Temperatures in Gwangmyeong and Paju soared above 40 degrees Celsius on Tuesday, marking the highest July temperatures ever recorded in the country. The intense heat wave has led to 2 more heat-related deaths, increasing the figure to 9 this year. Our Lee Seung-jae has more.
The intense heat wave continues in the capital region, with the western cities of Gwangmyeong and Paju seeing mercury readings soar above 40 degrees Celsius on Tuesday. According to the Korean Meteorological Administration, this marked the highest July temperatures ever recorded in the country. At around 3:24 p.m., Paju reached 40.1 degrees, while Gwangmyeong hit 40.2 degrees at around 3:42 p.m. The highest temperature ever recorded since weather observations began was 41 degrees in Hongcheon, Gangwon Province. However, that was in August 2018. Amid the intense heat wave, 2 more heat-related deaths were reported on Tuesday. 2 elderly people in Chungcheongnam-do Province, one in their 90s in Gwangju and the other in their 80s from Seosan, died, bringing the number of heat-related deaths this year to 9. That's a 3-fold jump from the same period last year. As of Monday, the country also reported 961 cases of heat-related illnesses, up from 478 the same period last year. And Seoul residents, too, are seeking an escape from the heat.
I'm working outside, and it's so hot, I feel like I'm going to melt. It's very hot. I want to go to the seaside.
The intense heat will continue in the capital on Wednesday, with Seoul forecast to see a daytime high reaching 36 degrees. The western regions will also see similar temperatures, with vulnerable groups such as children and the elderly advised to stay indoors and limit their outdoor activities. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
The United States sanctioned a North Korean individual accused of running a cyber scheme to allow Pyongyang to use its overseas IT workers to generate revenue for the regime. The U.S. Treasury Department's Office of Foreign Assets Control said Tuesday that it has sanctioned Song Keum-hyuk, describing him as a malicious actor associated with the North's hacking group, unveil. The department accused Hong of helping North Korean nationals to be recruited by foreign companies with falsified identities and generating revenue for the North Korean regime. It also sanctioned 1 Russian national, 2 Russian entities, and 2 North Korean entities for allegedly being involved in an IT worker scheme. Samsung Electronics is set to unveil its latest foldables, the Galaxy Z Flip 7 and Z Fold 7, at its Galaxy Unpacked 2025 event in Brooklyn, New York, at 11 p.m. Wednesday, Korea time. The South Korean tech giant will showcase its brand new lineup, including the Z Flip 7, Z Fold 7, and the base model of the Galaxy Watch 8. Samsung highlights the new Fold as its thinnest and lightest yet, with powerful AI capabilities. Also on display are other Galaxy devices, including a new smartwatch with enhanced health tracking features. Over in Europe, an annual event aimed at promoting Korean culture is taking place in Spain, and a signature dance performance has become the bridge, bringing the 2 nations together as one. Our Choi Soo-young was there.
Spain is a country renowned for its dance and passion. And in its capital, Madrid, stands a cultural landmark, the Matadero Art Theatre. There, a special performance unfolded, blending the past and present of Korean dance. A dancer walked through a dream. Traditional Korean sounds, pansori, 장구, and jing, filled the space, setting the stage for a soulful dance. The swishing of hanji, Korean traditional paper, mimicked the sounds of waves, telling people what Korean dance is. Modern styles like b-boy, hip-hop, and street dance also caught the eye. Through intense movements, dancers told stories of conflict in modern society, showing how far Korean contemporary dance has come. The final stage brought a dynamic mix of tradition and modern emotion, full of color and energy. And in the encore, the entire audience danced together in Korean folk song Gangang-sulle, the circle dance, as one, a true moment of cultural harmony.
I enjoyed every second of it, the dancers, the body language, the expression. At first I thought like I would not understand because we've come from different cultures, we have maybe have like different artistic languages, but it was so enjoyable, the expression and the story was was super clear.
The performance was amazing. It was a mix between what you can know about contemporary dance and things you didn't know about Korean, but you can interpret or think about.
Since 2022, South Korea's Ministry of Culture, Sports and Tourism has selected one country each year with strong potential for spreading Korean culture, offering a year-long series of cultural programs on site. This year, Spain was chosen. On Friday, July 4th, the performance titled A Dance Between Cultures showcased the spirit of the 2025 Korea season. Featuring acclaimed Korean teams recognized both at home and at international festivals like the Edinburgh Fringe, the event brought Korea and Spain together through dance.
Koreans and Spaniards both love music and dance. Through sharing that energy, it's a great way to connect emotions and open hearts. We wanted to show performances that people would want to see again even years later, with a more open mind and a positive mindset.
Spain's cultural scene also said why dance plays such an important role in helping Spain understand Korea.
Very funny, we are so far, but we have the same system to protect our identity through the culture, through the tradition, through the idea to move the tradition to another way to be, to express. So the past and the future, always together, always dancing together.
Under the theme, Two Cultures, One Heart, the performance blended Korean traditional and contemporary dance with Spanish artistry, marking up half a highlight of this year's Korea season. Cha Young, Arirang News, Madrid.
Good morning, I'm Choi Ji-hee, and this is The World Now. Beginning in Europe, French President Emmanuel Macron has made a state visit to the United Kingdom, receiving a ceremonial welcome from the British royal family and pledging renewed bilateral relations.
The United Kingdom and France must once again show the world that our alliance can make all the difference. Clearly, we have to work together in order to defend an efficient multilateralism.
On Tuesday, Macron and First Lady Brigitte began their three-day visit with a full royal welcome at Windsor Castle, greeted by King Charles III, Queen Camilla, Prince William and Princess Catherine in a horse-drawn carriage procession and Guard of Honor inspection. Macron delivered a rare address to both houses of parliament, urging Britain and France to reduce excessive dependencies on the U.S. and China, and calling for joint action on defense, migration, climate, and AI. He also announced $1.5 billion of EDF investment in a UK nuclear plant and a cultural loan deal to bring the Beja Tapestry to Britain for the first time in more than 900 years. This is the first state visit by a European leader since Brexit and the first for a French president since 2008. Israel has carried out a targeted airstrike in northern Lebanon, reportedly killing a senior Hamas figure, one of the first hits in the region in months. The Israel military announced on Tuesday that it had struck a key Hamas operative traveling in a car near Irania, just south of Lebanon's second largest city, Tripoli, marking the first targeted assassination in the region since November. Lebanese state media confirmed the strike hit a vehicle, killing at least 3 people and wounding 13 others. Al Arabi TV quoted a Hamas source in Lebanon, stating no senior official was killed, though Israel maintains its target was high-ranking. The recent strike came as U.S. envoy Thomas Barrack visited Lebanon amid efforts to disarm Hezbollah. However, Hezbollah chief Naim Qassem on Sunday ruled out giving up the group's weapons before Israel withdraws from all of southern Lebanon. Liverpool's Portuguese forward Diogo Jota and his brother Andre Silva were likely speeding when the rear tire of their car blew out, causing the crash that killed them both, according to a preliminary report from Spain's Civil Guard on Tuesday. Investigators say a tire imprint analysis suggests Jota, confirmed to be driving, was traveling well above the speed limit of 120 kilometers per hour while overtaking on a highway near Zamora, Spain, just before midnight on July 3rd. Evidence indicates that the overspeeding caused the Lamborghini in which they were traveling to veer off the road and crash. The results of the on-site investigation will be sent to the local court before being made public. A Martian meteorite weighing over 24 kilograms is going under the hammer. The specimen, known as NWA 16788, is verified as the largest piece of Mars ever found on Earth. It is estimated to fetch between $2 million and $4 million at Sotheby's upcoming auction in New York on July 16th. Before the sale, the meteorite will be on public display in Sotheby's galleries from July 8th to 15th. The rare chunk, which represents more than 6% of all Martian material found on Earth, was discovered in Niger in 2023. Though it is unclear exactly when it landed on Earth, minimal weathering suggests a recent fall.
Many people are wondering if early July is this hot. What will the rest of the summer bring? Yesterday, Seoul's daytime high soared to 37.8 degrees Celsius, a record-breaking heat for early July. And the heat will not be letting up today, with heat wave warnings continue for western parts of Korea. Isolated showers will continue from late afternoon to evening, and sudden downpours could hit Incheon and the western coast of Gyeonggi-do province during the day. You know, summer weather has been quite unpredictable lately, which is why many people in Korea nowadays are opting for dual-purpose umbrellas that shield them from both the sun and rain, also helping to keep them a bit cooler. And you're going to need one today as well, with sunny skies in store with very high UV levels nationwide. Seoul, Daejeon, Gwangju will be all topping out at 36 degrees, but the East Coast regions will again get slight relief from the heat, topping out at 32 degrees in Daegu. The heat should become a bit more bearable as the week goes on, so take good care of your health.
That's all we have for this morning. Arirang News will be back at 5 p.m. Korea time. Thanks for watching.